Welcome to Transform and Transformational, a TeachBeyond podcast. I'm Kian.
And I'm Heather. We're here to explore what it means to be transformed in our own lives and how that overflows to living lives of transformational impact in our communities.
Today, we are going to be talking about managing emotions. This isn't exactly the direction we're going today, but for some reason, when I hear that, it makes me think of, going off to your safe space, the place that you can be completely peaceful. Someone sitting by themselves on a bench in the woods.
Yeah.
It might sound like I'm actually making fun of that person, but trust me, I think that actually sounds wonderful.
Yes.
So I'm curious, Heather, do you have a place that you like to go when things are getting a little too crazy and you just need a peaceful place to escape to?
Yeah, probably the first thing that comes to my mind is less accessible for like an everyday escape.
Mhm.
The first thing that comes to my mind is that peacefulness of like being at the beach, listening to the waves crashing. If it's the morning, I'm holding a cup of coffee. Even better if it's like watching the sunrise or watching the sunset. Just so calming. There's usually, less going on at the beach at that time too.
Mhm.
So it's just so peaceful. I can picture, I've got my eyes closed right now. I'm picturing this right now. But I do think there's something about water and looking out over water that's really peaceful to me.
Yeah, I could totally understand that. Even just the rhythmic waves
Mm,
coming on
hmm
to the beach just being really calming.
It's so grounding. Yeah. What about you, Kian? Is it the park bench in the woods or?
I mean, that sounds amazing. I think all of these are not things we can actually do on a day-to-day basis. But for
Mm,
me, the one I would picture if I could go anywhere would be sitting at a campfire kind of by yourself in the dark in the
mhm.
morning, or also maybe as the sun is rising, or at night, and just sitting by the campfire, just quiet, and you can watch the fire flicker.
Yeah.
And just there's no
Yeah.
distractions, there's no clocks, there's nothing else kind of
Yeah.
distracting you, but just the little fire you can stare at and think.
Yes, I love a campfire. That is a great choice. I also think, maybe more in the everyday. I think I've mentioned this chair in my living room before, but like that particular place is really calming. I like to read in that chair. You can see the sunrise from that chair. There's something about, these natural rhythms, whether it's the sunrise, the sunset, or, being in nature and hearing that can just feel so peaceful and grounding, I think.
hmm Probably my day-to-day one would be going on a walk just around the neighborhood
Mm,
and not putting in headphones, which
mm-hmm,
I feel like
mm-hmm.
whenever I do that, I always want to put in headphones, listen to an
Yep.
audiobook, a
Yep.
podcast, some music. But when you turn those off for a little
Definitely.
while, or even put the headphones in and then leave the sound off, is actually a
Mhm.
really peaceful experience.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
Our guest today is Kelly Crandall, who is a school psychologist at Faith Academy in the Philippines. Kelly has a bachelor's in Bible and elementary education from Moody Bible Institute and an ed specialist degree from University of Kansas.
Kelly wrote an article about equipping students to manage strong emotions. So that's the focus of our conversation today. We'll link to that article in the show notes.
Let's go over to the conversation with Kelly now.
Welcome to the podcast, Kelly.
Thanks for having me.
Kelly, we are excited to have you. As we start talking about managing emotions, I'm curious if you have a specific place in your life that you find the most peaceful. Me and Heather were just discussing this and coming up with some different places we find that we kind of retreat to when things get really crazy. Do you have any place in mind that you like to go to?
Honestly, I don't think it's one particular place or setting. Well, just I would say my room with my door shut or on my couch
Mhm.
is probably
Hmm.
the most peaceful. I feel insulated in there and
Hmm.
safe, and just I can be alone to process or to recharge or whatever I
Hmm.
need.
That's great. Well, I know that you've done several different roles in education, Kelly, and maybe you can fill us in a little bit on your journey as an educator so far.
Sure. I was realizing that my journey as an educator started 10 years ago.
Wow,
And
yeah. That's a milestone.
I know,
Congrats.
well, it hasn't been entirely consecutive, but 10 years ago, I started as a teacher, middle school teacher. And I did that at Faith Academy in the Philippines and was there for 3 years in that role. And I loved it. I think middle schoolers are the best.
I
Um,
concur.
um, and then I just felt like God was leading me in a little bit of a different direction, still in education. My heart is in education, and I'm a teacher by heart always, even though my role is different now. But I went back to the States for grad school. So I got my educational specialist degree in school psychology. So what that means is that basically an expert in everything special education. So evaluation and intervention and consultation systems, lots of different things. And then after I got that degree, I was asking the Lord, okay, where next? I want to go back on the mission field. And he actually took me right back to Faith Academy. So I've been here
Mm.
for the last 4 years, but in the school psychologist role.
I love it. I love that you are just passionate about students and saw the power of further education. So you went and got that and they were able to still come back. Today, as we're talking about equipping students to manage emotions, what would you say is important about managing emotions and helping students manage emotions? I mean, if I'm a math teacher, I know that I need to teach my students algebra. So how much time can you spend on this other topic? What's the importance of that?
Yeah, that's a good question because I think sometimes teachers already feel stressed and stretched for getting through all of their curriculum. So why would you try to cram one more thing in? And I guess I see two different implications. There's a kind of a short term and a long term. So in the short term, there there's the reality that if kids are anxious or upset or angry, that there is not a lot of learning that is getting into their brains. And so the first I see talking about emotions or helping students to regulate their emotions as an investment in the rest of their learning. So can I get you to a better place where you can focus and concentrate and that your brain is the most alert? So that would be the more the short term, but in the long term, we do value academics as teachers for sure, but we also recognize that our students are whole people and we really want to develop the whole person. And if our students can't regulate their emotions, there's a lot of things about life that could be hard, even maintaining relationships or keeping a job. If you're getting angry and throwing fits
Yeah.
about things that
Yeah.
happen, that's not going to work out very well. So
Mhm.
we want to teach some of those soft skills that are really important for life.
I like that you even mention the benefits of the student to be able to learn and take in information. But I
Mhm.
imagine from a almost a selfish point of view, for the teacher, it helps if the classroom is has students that are well regulated emotionally for the
Mhm.
teacher to be able to get through the curriculum versus having to get off topic a lot.
Mhm.
Absolutely. You might have students who are zoning out, but if you'd spent that time at the front end of, oh, I can address maybe why you're distracted right now or why you can't pay attention, then yeah, you're not so frustrated.
Yeah. I was just thinking how Kian was mentioning earlier the like taking time for this. And I wonder what it looks like to actually put this into your day, as a teacher to structure this. Is this something that's planned ahead, or is this something that happens kind of in the moment as needed? And whether it's something that's actually taking time to pause from the lesson, to pause from the content versus something that's happening kind of concurrently as needed. I'm curious your thoughts on that.
I think it can definitely be both. I think it's great in to build into your routines. And often at the beginning of the day or the beginning of the class period, that's a good time for some kind of check-in because you're helping to set the stage for the rest of the learning that's taking place. But then there are also going to be those moments that come up in the middle. I know if I've gone over a really hard concept or I can just see in my students' faces and I just pause, I'm like, how are we doing right now? Or, you get partway through your lesson and you realize they're all worried about the test in their next period, but maybe you haven't done that at the beginning, but there's times and opportunities to pause with them and do some of that processing.
Yeah, for sure. I think it might be helpful if we dive into some of the specifics of some of the strategies that you recommend, Kelly, and then maybe that will lead us to a better understanding of what it looks like to actually put this into your day as a teacher. So, could you talk us through some specific strategies along these lines, and maybe those that work for younger grades or upper grades, since we know that learners have different needs at different age groups, but this is still important in all ages. So, what would you say to that?
Definitely. There are strategies that work for all ages. So I'd say for teachers of any grades, you can lead your students through some deep breathing exercises. So I'm imagining calming music, and you can find 2-minute YouTube videos of there's the tracing the square or the figure eight breathing with soothing music, and that's really quick. And even if your teenagers don't think they need it, that's it still is something that regulates the body, it slows the
Mm.
heart rate, it helps us to get back to a state of calm. And I might start with that, and then that's a great lead in to prayer too, of all right, let's calm our bodies and our minds, and then let's pray about where we're at, or the things that are on our mind, or
Mm.
what's the learning that's about to take place, and then we can start our time after that. So
Mhm. Mhm.
that could be something really quick for any age. I think about our elementary classrooms, especially having a space in the room, if you want to call it a peace corner or a calm down corner, but somewhere where students can go, they know they can go if they need a minute. And I think, yeah, even as adults, so many of these things still apply to us. And there are times that we need to step away for a minute
Yeah.
and take some deep breaths, or do some reflecting about, okay, what am I feeling and why. So having a place in the classroom where students can go to freely, I would set those up with where it's a comfy space, and you might have some of those breathing exercises on cards or something to cue them. What are they supposed to do in that space? And maybe some pillows or some fidgets and a timer, so that they know, okay, when I go here, I can set the timer for 3 minutes, for 5 minutes, and check in with myself to see, am I ready to go back, or maybe I need to set it one more time. I know sometimes teachers might include some reflection sheets of, why did I, is there something that triggered me to come here? And depending on the age of the kid, they can do more of that, have more of that self-awareness.
How does that work? Do kids get to go off on their own? Do they decide that? Does the teacher say, hey, maybe go spend a little bit of time there? Do they have to raise their hand? Do they do it on their own? How does that work in the classroom practically?
I think it can look like a couple different things. Most of the time, a student is going to elect to just go there. Of, I'm
Hmm.
recognizing that I'm getting upset. A teacher might suggest it, or will ask a question. Do you think that'd be helpful right now? Because that's a process of learning. Oh, I am dysregulated, or I do need to go calm down. They Students don't necessarily have even that awareness or skill. So to, for the teacher to cue them, what we don't want that to be is a punishment of, I am sending you to the calm down
Right.
corner because you need to go and get your emotions worked out. But other than that, and I would recommend teaching how to use that space appropriately. Just like anything in the classroom, we're teaching very explicitly, what are all the tools in here? These are tools. And when might I go here? When is a good time? When's not a good time? And then even encouraging them as they're learning how to use it at the beginning of the year, to maybe randomly send kids there even when they're calm. Okay, go check out the calm down corner and get familiar with it, so that it's not just
Mhm.
in that moment of dysregulation is the first time that they've ever had to practice using it.
Yeah.
That's great. That's really helpful advice and wisdom and how to use it. What about for upper grades, older kids? What do you recommend for those students?
Yeah, I think with some of I have a high school homeroom, and what we've done at times was I would show a bunch of emojis, and I numbered them, and I said, which one most reflects how you're feeling right now. And
Mhm.
maybe if as a whole class, they just hold up a number, right? So they're holding up a 4, and you have a just a picture into how that student's doing right then. Or maybe they share with a partner, or they write it down somewhere. But that's something that's quick and really easy for the students to engage in. You could also maybe have a list of emotions or an emotion wheel, and just have them pause and reflect on how they're doing or what they need in order to be ready to learn. I like I like when the teachers, me as a teacher, I would want to get some of that input. So maybe they're giving you like a fist to five on how ready they are to learn. So 0, I am totally out of it. Or 5, yep, I am here, I'm alert, I am ready to go. But you can then follow those up with conversations, or which students that you need to be a little bit more mindful of in that time.
Kelly, I really love how you're pointing out that even if they might not realize that they need this, that this would benefit them, even if it feels a little cheesy, that it is so helpful. And as you're talking about this, we're nodding along. Yes, this would be helpful even for us as adults too. And so learning these strategies in a way that it's like being handed to them, like, hey, this is something we are going to do as a class. We're, it's not a punishment, it's going to be something we're doing together. Maybe we'll build in them more self-awareness, more value of that. But at least in the moment it's serving the purpose that it needs to, giving the teacher information, giving that student information, giving them the pause, the time to check in with themselves. And so I love that building this into the routine in the classroom is actually, it's a gift to the whole class and to the teacher as they're entering into learning together. So I appreciate that.
One thing I'd add, I guess, is as your students get older, well, even when with younger ones, but you as the teacher get to model that also. So even, in small ways, to you might say, I'm having a really hard day. I just found out that my dog is sick, right? Of, okay, I ask you to have some patience with me, or I'm feeling a little bit sad right now, but you can model some of that emotion language or even strategies. This is how I help calm myself down or get myself ready to teach or to work.
That is really helpful. In the article, you talked about actually teaching the kids directly through a special curriculum about how to regulate their emotions. Can you talk us through the different zones of regulation and maybe give us some practical steps to help students self identify what zone they're in any given moment?
Sure. There are a lot of curriculums out there for social emotional awareness. One that I wrote about in the article was called Zones of Regulation, and it breaks up emotions into 4 different colors or zones that have to do with different levels of awareness, if you will. So, like a blue zone would be a low state of arousal. So those would be tired, sad, depressed, sick. Those states where you're feeling kind of lethargic. So that's the blue zone. The green zone is kind of your target for learning. Not that one zone is better than the other, but that's where we hope to be at. That's where the best learning can take place. So that's happy, content. So that's green. Yellow would be more of a little bit of a heightened state of arousal. That's a little bit anxious or worried or excited, even something that my heart rate's maybe beating a little bit faster or have a little extra energy. And that'd be yellow. And then red would be a high state of arousal. So that'd be furious, or I'm feeling out of control. I, I have so much energy in my body. And I think that language of what's happening in your body is really helpful for helping kids to identify what state they're in. So, is my body feeling really weak and limp? So maybe I'm in the blue zone, right? Or, oh, I'm tapping my foot or I'm tapping my fingers. This is what all of us do. That's kind of that yellow. And if I'm hitting something or throwing something, or I feel that really big in my arms, that might mean that I'm in the red zone. So you're raising kids' awareness to what's happening in their body, and that can help us then name the emotion that we're feeling.
That's so helpful to have the physical action that's happening as a sign that, oh, maybe I need to pay attention to why I'm tapping my finger or why I'm feeling like I could punch something. Yeah, that's really helpful and concrete. So what happens for the student that is not really ready to learn? Like, what do you advise to the teacher to do in that moment if it's obvious that they're, not in that zone where they're really ready.
So using some of that zone language, you would there's a process, right, of building knowledge of the zones, and then building awareness of what's going on in your body, what zone are you in, and then it's pairing tools and strategies with each of the zones. So if we're not in green, if we're not ready to learn, there are some strategies, or there's some steps that we can take. So if we're in blue and we're feeling kind of sad, maybe we ask someone for a hug, or maybe we go hug a stuffed animal in the calm down corner, or maybe we get up and take a walk because we need to wake up. So we want to teach the different strategies. So for yellow, sometimes even taking a walk, for that, let's go and get a drink, or walk off some of that energy. We'll speed walk, or take some calming breaths. Let's try to lower that heart rate. But you want to teach really specific strategies for then what do I do?
Let's take a short break for a story from the field.
My name is Maurice Kabuye. I'm the National Director, TeachBeyond Uganda. We are very excited to be starting what we have named Butambala Christian Learning Center Vocational. That is, I want to say, a life changer in the community. And so they come out of school when they've not gone far, and the boys don't have what to do. The girls now are raising their own children, and they are young, and they did not go to school. And so you find that the poverty is just going in circles. And so one of the main reasons is to break that cycle, to teach, bring in literacy, bring in a mindset change, then give a skill to these people. And then the real gist of the whole thing is the gospel. And we believe we don't have to take the gospel to these people empty-handed. We want to really be able to say, you have a skill, you have a mindset that has been changed, you understand what your future should look like, what God has destined for you, and hey, there is Jesus here who's helped you run to this level, who's helped you to get to another level. Or we want to really see how to bring the gospel to the community.
For our weekly spotlight, we are focusing on the school that Kelly teaches at, Faith Academy in the Philippines. To learn more, visit teachbeyond.org/go or click on the link in the show notes. You mentioned in the beginning, kind of for older kids, taking the classroom levels of, hey, everybody put up your hands. What if it's everybody's a 5, everybody's in the green zone, ready to learn, but there's one student who's not with the rest of the classroom, who's in the red zone, not ready to learn. And maybe that happens once, and kind of how do you manage that? And what if it's a consistent, this student just is having trouble regulating their emotions as a long-term situation?
Right, because those are very different. Everyone's going to have an off day, and so there might be a day where this student is coming in very upset about something, or just off, or angry. And so I always you'd love to have a conversation with a kid if you have a chance. That's not always possible if you're doing this at the beginning of class and you've got a whole slew of students. But if you can have a conversation, that's great. You could also even just say, hey, take a few minutes and maybe write about what you're feeling right now. You can ignore what we're doing as a class. This is more important. Or send them out to the hallway and say, take a walk and see if that makes you feel better. Or is there someone that you need to talk, that safe person for you to talk to right now? Would that be helpful for you? So even if that's not you, maybe connecting them with someone who is available. So that would be more for the one-off situations. If you've got your chronic students who are having trouble regulating their emotions, I think first of all, as teachers, we have to stay regulated. And it can be that when students' emotions get big, that ours get big too, because we're feeling uncomfortable. If they're anxious, maybe they've zoned out, and that's really hard for us. Or maybe they're pacing around the room, and that's really hard for us. But recognizing those behaviors as communication. And I think it takes some conversations with the student of, hey, I noticed this. Do you know what's going on? Is there something that I can do to help you? Sometimes they don't have good language for it. I've worked with kids where you try to have a conversation and they just stare at you because they don't know how to answer that question. And I think in those situations, maybe you give some options of, yeah, when something's really hard for me, I know that I might feel really frustrated or I might feel stupid. Does that ever happen to you? You try to give them some, if you have some idea of what set them off, then you can try to give them clues. At least they can say, no, that's not it at all. Or, yeah, maybe that is what I'm feeling right now. If it's more chronic, that's when I would be collaborating with other staff members. Hey, let's make a plan and figure out uh, if we can figure out what's going on, or maybe there's a skill deficit, or there's more ongoing skill building that we need to do. Maybe that's them meeting with the counselor, or to talk through some of their negative thinking, or talk through their emotions. Someone who can help them on a more of a long-term basis. That might be a time to bring in somebody else.
These are great because I'm not a teacher, so I can see how these skills are just so useful in a classroom, managing a large group of kids, managing one individual kid. But even as a parent, I can see this kind of being really relevant and useful when when a kid in the classroom has a reaction that just feels disproportionate to the situation that they're in, and realizing, hey, maybe they're not in the green zone, they're not a 5, they're feeling dysregulated about something else, and that's what's causing these reactions. So that's really helpful to realize, both for the classroom management skill, and then also just interacting with kids in general, humans in general, who just have a whole world of emotions behind every situation that they're in and experience that they're having.
Yeah, and it seems like we don't know the whole story, right? Like we only know what we're seeing, and then maybe the conversation that we have, whether this is another adult or with a student, giving that grace to kind of see the bigger picture of what might be happening that isn't visible at the moment.
That's a good point. Just not to assume that we know, because
Mhm.
we might be trying to fix a problem for a student that's not actually there. So
Yeah.
with input from the student or the family, maybe the parents have a better idea of what's going on or what's happening, then you can partner better together.
Yeah. Yeah. Along those lines, for a parent like Kian, and for other parents out there, what would you want the parents, the caregivers of students to know about this, maybe from the school classroom point of view, and how those parents and the school can partner well together in this area?
I would say that there are lots of parents out there that aren't quite sure how to help their child manage their emotions. And so for the educators, if there are tools that you're using in your classroom, share those with the parents. Send them out in your weekly newsletter. If you're teaching a new strategy or technique, maybe you could add that in as a note to parents, and then you get those ideas and concepts reinforced at home, which only is better for the kids. I also am thinking that our school has recently implemented a social emotional screener. So the idea with that is to get in elementary, we get teacher ratings, and then for our upper elementary and middle and high school students, they rate themselves on a bunch of items like I feel lonely, or I often worry and I don't know why, or I feel like other people don't like me. All these different items, just to get a picture of how are they doing, what's their emotional state like, because we don't always see it, or we don't always know how to interpret it. So when they tell us, even if it's on a written survey, that's great communication for us as a school. And what we've been able to do is then share that information with parents. And then it becomes a really powerful way to support our students. So, along with the teachers sharing what's going on in the classroom, it's also really helpful for the teachers to hear what's going on at home. So, if there are changes in the environment, or if our pet bird just died. We had a student this year. And so that's really helpful information. At school, we know to be a little bit more sensitive, or maybe those
Mhm.
teachers who have relationships with them can check in with them and just say, how are you doing? But at least it gives the teachers a lot more awareness and ability to care.
Kelly, these have been some really helpful, practical strategies, things for us to be implementing, some pretty small and some that might take bigger changes. And so it's really helpful to have these. And, maybe as we're wrapping up, it might be helpful to hear a few stories or specific examples of how you've seen this playing out, making a difference. I think that can particularly inspire me and help me to be motivated to say, okay, this is going to be worth it to make the changes that we need. So, what would you say to that?
Well, I was actually having a conversation with a friend this week about something she had done in her classroom. The class had taken a test, and it was kind of a hard test, and they had gone over it in class. And after they'd gone over it, she teaches high school math. So she said, flip over your test papers and draw a circle. And when they'd done that, she said, draw a face that describes how you're feeling right now. So, again, super quick, easy way to get a lot of feedback from your students. So, they drew all their faces and turned in their test papers back to her. And so then she could flip through and see, how maybe actually what she found was that a lot of students, even who got an A, are drawing these very meh faces. They're not very pleased with themselves. Some of them are even crying. One got a 95 and she's still expressing all these tears. So it opened the door for a conversation about what is our standard, and about maybe perfectionism, or what is good enough, and why are we not content with these, or if we did study, we applied ourselves. And so anyway, it just gave her so much more information about her students and where they're at than she would have had.
I love that. The tools to really just engage with your students in such a different level, such a deeper level, and
Mhm.
really interact with these students that you're working with for a year and trying to actually get to know them in a much deeper level than you would otherwise.
And that took what, like 20 seconds longer. It wasn't
Right.
a big change, but it gave her all that information. That's great.
Thank you, Kelly, so much. This was such a good conversation. So many really useful tools to be able to apply interacting with students in the classroom. Before we let you go, there's one question we like to ask all of our guests, and that's what's one thing that's changing your life right now? So this can be something really big, something life changing, obviously, or something small, something that's changing your life in a small way. I'll go first. You have a little bit of time to think about it. Um, and the thing that's changing my life is probably something small. Is we just got
Mhm.
ceiling stars for my kids, and I grew up with
Oh
them
my
where, the
word.
little glow in
Yes.
the dark stars you put on the ceiling, and then they stay there for way longer than they probably should because they're on your ceiling and you forget about them.
Yes.
But we just put them up last night, and they're just, it's a nice little touch. It's always a fun thing to
That's
see when
so
you turn
fun.
off the lights and all of a sudden, oh, I forgot about those stars on the ceiling. So
Yes.
that's changing my life, changing our life right now.
That's so fun. Did you make like specific constellations with them? Are they all over the ceiling?
Um, I was kind of excited about this. We have a poster that's a outer space kind of poster, and so I
Uh-huh.
made the stars coming out of the poster onto the ceiling. So
Oh, nice.
I think it looks cool. We'll see if it actually anyone cares about it besides me, but I enjoyed placing them in that fashion.
That's awesome. That's great. Mine's probably also something small that's having a bigger impact. I have been meal prepping, but not for like whole meals. So, like when I'm making one meal, I'm cooking some sweet potato or, cooking some rice or something like that that could be used for pieces of other meals. So that while I'm at the stove, I might as well do two things at one time. And then I can put the pieces together in different ways to have a little more variety to cooking for one, having pieces of meals can add some more variety. So yeah, it's been working out really well. And then it's not like 5 hours in the kitchen trying to meal prep the entire week. It's just, each time I'm cooking, there's something else being done. So yeah. What has been changing your life lately, Kelly?
So this will tell you just how nerdy I am, but I I have started learning calculus, which if
Oh.
in my I told my homeroom girls this, and they're just like, why? Actually, that's most people's reaction, but that's what I've been doing in my leisure. And I just remember one of a colleague early on talking about how valuable it is for teachers to be learners. So, as a teacher, what can you be learning right now? Because it puts you in a place just like your students. I think it helps
Yeah.
you to empathize with, wow, this feels really hard, or I'm not getting this right, or all the feelings of learning, and which is challenging but also
Yeah.
good. And
Yeah.
I do enjoy it.
That's great. That's awesome. What a fun answer. I can't say that anyone else has ever said that calculus is changing their life, but that is great. I love that you brought that up. And what a great perspective to have as a teacher, too. Well, Kelly, thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate it. And thanks for sharing from your knowledge and wisdom. And yeah, appreciate your time.
Yeah, my pleasure.
That was such an interesting conversation. I can see so many of those tools being useful in a classroom for both the students and also the teacher to help manage the classroom and the kids in the classroom. I also find a lot of those useful as a parent in reflecting on my kids' emotions at any given point in the day.
Yeah, so much good food for thought. Kian, Kelly, and I all serve with an organization called TeachBeyond. Education plays a big role in missions, and TeachBeyond is a part of that.
As followers of Jesus, TeachBeyond is a global community providing transformational education services as part of God's ongoing mission to transform individuals and communities into all He intends.
Want to learn more and get involved? Visit teachbeyond.org or follow us on social media.
To help more people find the podcast and hear about Teach Beyond, we'd love it if you would leave a rating or review and share this show with a friend. Be sure you're subscribed or following the show on the platform where you listen so you never miss an episode.
And as always, you can reach us at podcast@teachbeyond.org. We'll see you next week.
The mystery word for this week is holistically.